Hey everybody, Adam here. Today I wanted to make a little video about how to evaluate pathology residency program websites and some terms that you may not know about pathology that are thrown around on these websites that kind of were tough for me to figure out and can navigate what is important to you when you're trying to decide on where you want to go for residency. So, as a brief introduction, my name's Adam. I'm a current fourth year medical student at Rocky Vista University College of Osteopathic Medicine. Right now, waiting for the match. I have completed my interviews, gone through this whole process evaluating these residency programs, spent a lot of time trying to figure some of this stuff out. So, this is a video that I would have loved to have watched about a year ago to understand some of these terms and what it is I'm actually looking at when I'm trying to figure out what residencies I care about. So I'm gonna pull some stuff from three different well-known pathology residencies and their websites. This is Johns Hopkins website, this is University of Michigan's website, and this is Stanford's website. So those are just a few that I'm more familiar with as we learn about some of this stuff. Some more about me. I'm applying to a combined AP-CP residency, which means that my residency will be 4 years long and I will be trained in both anatomic and clinical pathology. That is one of the four ways that people are trained to become pathologists generally. There are four pathways. Here they are on Johns Hopkins website. The vast majority of applicants are going to be applying to APCP. If you are undifferentiated, if you don't know what kind of fellowship you want to do, if you're not sure if you want to be in an academic or a community setting for your practice, you're going to probably be applying to an APCP program. If you know for sure that you want to be a full-on academic forever and you want to have a very specific research-heavy area of focus, you might be more enticed by one of these other offerings. An AP-only residency is only anatomic pathology. This is a 3-year program. A CP-only program is clinical pathology only, and that is a 3-year program. AP-NP, this is anatomic pathology and neuropathology combined. Generally, how this functions is these residents will do 2 years of anatomic pathology, followed by a 2-year neuropathology fellowship that is combined into one program. So that is, overall usually a 4-year program. Again, these programs are usually more research focused and for people who are planning on a fully academic career. So that's what I'm applying to. I also, in terms of my values and what I care about for residency, I'm not very tied to location. A lot of people are going to be really tied to location, which is great. And so that can help narrow down your search of residencies. The FRIDA tool on that the AAMC offers can be really helpful in finding out which pathology residencies are located in the areas you're interested in. Additionally, I'm a DO student, so I want to go to a program that takes DOs and is willing to, is not unfamiliar with that in a resident. Also, I have 2 young children and I'm married, so living in a place where the stipend matches the or the cost of living in a city is important to us as well. So those are kind of big factors that played into my selection of where I wanted to apply to residency. Another thing that was really important to me was teaching. I love to teach, so I wanted places that offered some additional training in teaching or leadership and things like that. So that's a little bit about me. In terms of how to evaluate these websites, let's go back to the homepage here. Often when you first land on a residency program's homepage, you're going to get a welcome from the program director, or you'll get kind of a general overview of the program, what they value most about themselves. Like here's a little fact sheet about the Michigan program, fact sheet about their residents. You go to the Stanford homepage, they have a lot of news on this first page and some different message from the chair, etc. I will say that, I'm sorry, this is the department. You want to come. This happens sometimes where if you go to just the pathology website, you go to the department, you want to come to education and then down to the residency program. So see here, this has their overview and some videos. So one of the first things that I'm going to look at when I evaluate a residency program website is their current residents. I like to, usually you'll find a tab over here or at the top or whatever, where you can find current residents. I'm curious to know whenever I look at this, usually they'll have some stuff from chief residents at the top of these kind of pages. Um, I'm always curious to know kind of where they're pulling applicants from, if applicants are, uh, from just local, if they are from all over the United States, if they take a lot of international graduates, if they've taken osteopathic medical students before. So I like to just quickly glance over these and see kind of what kind of qualifications people have, where they're coming from, things like that. Um, and so that's one of the first things that I'll do when I look at a residency program site. For example, if, as I am a DO student from the United States, if a program has only MD, PhD residents that are from a different part of the United States, it's unlikely that I'll be considered heavily at that program. So that's one thing. Another thing that I care about and that I like to look at is the curriculum. Now, um, curriculum is interesting because the part of the curriculum that you care about is going to vary a lot based off your interests. I would say the majority of applicants lean more towards anatomic pathology. So that's mostly what I'm going to speak to. Clinical pathology curriculum can also be highly variable. I have minimal experience with clinical pathology up to this point. I don't really look at that right now. But in terms of anatomic pathology training, there are a few things that I care about and that I look at. Um, so just as a preface of what we're going to discuss, I'm going to come over here to Michigan's site to talk about this, um, to their curriculum, required rotations, uh, and then I'm sorry, structure and design. This is where it is. Yeah, here it is. Sorry. So this is how their surgical pathology rotations are designed. There's a few things here that are important. Sign out, previewing, and grossing. These are the main things that pathology residents do on a surgical rotation. These are like their three main tasks that they're going to be doing all day, every day. And so briefly what these are, sign out is when you sit down with the attending or the fellow or whoever's in charge of the case, and you will present kind of what you think about the case, or depending on how they do it, they'll do it a little bit differently, but basically the faculty member will explain to you the diagnosis they're making, why they're making it. They may involve you more or less in that process depending on their own personal style. Um, Sometimes after the sign out kind of meeting, the resident will have tasks to accomplish, either stains to order, reports to finish up, X, Y, Z, depending on how the program flows. Previewing, this is, you know, the fun part, in my opinion. This is when you are alone with the slides, and you get to just look at and make your own diagnosis of the material. So this is you just writing your own reports, looking at in the microscope by yourself, all that kind of stuff. Grossing, this is when you take the surgical sample and you prepare it for histology, essentially. So you'll look at, like, say you get a big tumor, right? You get the tumor and you have the tumor in your hands, right? You look at it, you describe its size, its color, any features it has, etc. You'll take some pictures and then you will cut it up. You'll cut it into sections. You'll take certain sections that you want to see under the microscope. A lot of this is, very, hard lined in terms of what you're supposed to do. And so you'll have people teach you this, and each specimen will have different ways of handling it and of grossing it. But for most of this, you're on your feet. Uh, this is generally accepted to be kind of the worst part of surgical pathology. Most people do not like grossing very much. So, how programs handle grossing is usually a topic that gets talked about a lot. One of the main things about this to know is what this means, a 1-day sign out cycle. So, people will just mention this and throw this out all the time. It took me like forever to figure out what this meant. It was like after my second rotation before I figured out what anybody was talking about with this. Uh, what this means is, are you doing each of these three activities every day or not, essentially? On a 1-day sign out cycle, that means that you are doing each of these activities every day. So usually how that works is in the morning, you'll do sign out. In the afternoon, you will gross. And then either in the evening or in the early morning, you will preview. So you're doing the same thing every day. This is what I hugely prefer, just because this matches my workflow from medical school. I just like to have things to break up the day. I like to, kind of have the same workflow every day. This is contrasted with the other main way that people do this is a 3-day cycle. A 3-day cycle means that you are signing out every third day. So you'll have like a day of grossing, a day of previewing, and then a day of sign out. Um, this can have its own advantages. Usually, the advantage to this is that you know which day you are grossing, and that day is going to be the worst day of the cycle. It's going to be the latest, it's going to be the hardest. The other two are going to be lighter. And so you can kind of plan your own personal life schedule around that grossing day to get other things done that you need to. Some people like that. Whereas the 1-day cycle can be a little bit less predictable because you have that variable component of grossing as part of every day. Additionally, some programs will do a 3-day cycle because they don't have the facilities or the space for every resident to be grossing every day. This changes a lot in programs. I think programs are constantly working on new ways to make grossing educational for residents, productive for the department, but not too onerous for anybody. So it's just kind of a constant point of contention that people are trying to figure out. So that's just something to keep in mind. Other things that affect grossing is and this is something that I never find on websites. This is something that always kind of came up in interviews or at open houses. But stuff like case caps, right? Like how many are you grossing everything in the department, or are PAs grossing majority of the specimens and you are assigned one educational specimen, right? There is variability in that, how that's handled. Do you gross on weekends? Is grossing part of your call requirements? All these things are variables that people care about. To me, all of that reads as something that like I'm going to care about a lot as a resident, but it's just so hard for me to kind of visualize what any of that means that I can't justify making it an important part of my decision just because I don't really understand the ins and outs and the pros and cons, and I've seen it change like while I've been at programs, like it changes all the time. So uh, I think the most important thing with that is you just want to find a program that seems like they're listening to the residents and they're working to improve these processes based off feedback. Other things that are important about surgical pathology, and again, I'm talking the most about this because this is usually the most variable part of a program's curriculum and the one that residents care about the most because it's usually the most stressful rotations. You know, like ins and outs of the microbiology rotation don't matter as much to most people because one, they don't care about microbiology as much, and two, it's usually a pretty easy rotation. So the ways that programs shift, a couple components of it don't really affect people too much. Um, the other thing that's important about this is a subspecialty sign out model. Okay. So this is one of the other big variables that people discuss about surgical pathology. What this means is when you are on a surgical pathology rotation, are you going to just get one organ system that you're in charge of for a couple of weeks? Or are you going to be in charge of just anything that comes through the door? So in a subspecialty model, you would be, for example, the resident on the breast service. So you would be receiving only breast specimens, evaluating only breast specimens, and signing out with a breast pathology expert for a couple of weeks. So this gets you kind of a deep dive into one organ system. And in my opinion, this is a little bit better for my learning. I like to just hone in on something like this. Um, the other way that people do this is all of their surgical pathology rotations follow a general sign out model, which means whenever you're on surgical pathology, anything that comes through the door is just split up between the residents based off of their training level and just whatever is available. So that can be good because that models a community practice flow, right? Only in academics are you going to have subspecialty sign out for the most part. So if there's any part of you that wants to do community practice, it could definitely be good to have some kind of a component of general sign out. Um, a way that a lot of the academic programs will deal with this is they'll have subspecialty sign out on their main campus, but sometimes if you go rotate like at their VA or at their community hospital, like for example at Johns Hopkins, they rotate for a couple months at the Bayview Hospital, and at Bayview they do general sign out. So you kind of get a taste of both options. So that can be important for people. I prefer a subspecialty sign out again, one, because I like how the learning is, and two, I am planning on working primarily in academics. So I don't necessarily see like need a lot of general sign out experience based off of what I view my career trajectory to be. But Again, I don't think any of these are make or break things. It's just valuable to know what people are talking about when you're reading this stuff. Um, Another thing that can be important is where you are actually doing your learning. So if we come here, we read about this. It says most of our clinical and anatomic pathology facilities are located at the North Campus Research Campus and at the University of Michigan Medical Center. So basically, you have two different locations that you're working at if you're a resident at the University of Michigan. Um, this is variable, right? Some programs you do everything at one spot, and some programs you have to go to 5 different locations around the city, depending on what rotation you're on. Some people like the variation, some people hate it. So that's another thing to kind of keep in mind as a little bit of a thing to care about. And again, all of this is very, you know, nothing is, if there was just a best way to do it, everybody would do it that way. So just pros and cons based off your personal preference. So when you're on your audition rotations, your sub-Is, whatever, keep in mind kind of how they're doing things. Ask the residents about what they like about it, what they don't like about it, and try and formulate kind of an opinion. And it makes it easier when you're doing interviews to have an opinion about these kinds of things, just to have something to talk about, think about, ask questions about, etc. Um, but for the most part, what most people are going to be making their decision based off of is location, and I think that's great and that's really important. Um, let's see, another thing that is important, you can always find like a program advantages or a benefits tab or whatever, and reading about different perks or benefits that residencies have can be helpful. Um, for example, where is it? Oh yeah, Michigan does this thing that I think is really cool where they give all their pathology residents a ergonomics assessment, which is kind of fun to help you be comfortable with your microscope. So there's just little things like that that can be kind of fun to bring up or talk about during interviews. One other thing I wanted to have Stanford's page here for was fellowships. I like to look at fellowships a lot when I'm evaluating programs because I really want to stay at the same program for fellowship that I go to for residency, just because I don't want to move the family again. That's important to me. So I want to go somewhere with a fellowship that I'm interested in. Um, and one thing that it took forever again for me to figure out is this ACGME accreditation of fellowships. The ACGME accredits all residency programs, right? To participate in the NRMP match, a residency program has to be accredited by the ACGME. So that's like a big deal. And you read a lot about programs like losing accreditation and that being like the end of the world for their residents. So this is like this was a thing that when I first started seeing that a lot of pathology fellowships are not ACGME accredited, I was very confused about. Um, and so, like at Stanford, they have 15 ACGME accredited fellowships, and most of their subspecialty surgical pathology fellowships are ACGME accredited. Now, if you contrast this with the University of Michigan, they have these fellowships which are ACGME accredited and these fellowships which are not. And so you would think that, a program with a reputation like University of Michigan would have all of their fellowships accredited, and that's what I was confused by at first. But I don't, that is not at all the case. For fellowships, because most of these fellowships don't participate in the NRP match, accreditation is definitely not as big of a deal. And attending an ACGME accredited fellowship is not something that employers really care about. So when you go to an ACGME accredited fellowship, that does offer some security, and it is nice to know that that is accredited and like somebody's, making sure that it's up to snuff or whatever. Um, but one of the things about ACGME accredited fellowships is fellows in those programs are not allowed to do independent sign out. And some training programs think that that's a really important part of fellowship is to do some independent sign out. So if you attend a non-ACGME accredited fellowship, it is possible, maybe likely, that you will be doing some independent supervised sign out or some independent sign out of basic cases while you're a fellow. So it's basically just like not a big deal. Like it's not something I care about hugely. It was when I first started seeing it all over the place and I didn't understand. I was like trying to understand why people weren't accredited. But now that I understand it more, I think you should just know that that does not matter very much. And it's like a nitty gritty, like preference thing when it comes to the training program. So those are the main things I wanted to talk about today. I think that, there's a lot of factors and just a lot of these words, you just have never heard them before. So it's helpful to have them kind of laid out for you. Um, I think that the best way to understand what is important to you is to just kind of read different websites and see their offerings. And then when you go to a rotation, um, if you have the vocabulary to understand, like, hey, these residents seem to be on a 1 day cycle, then you can ask them, do you like to be on a 1 day cycle? And you can understand kind of the pros and cons. But if you don't know what the words are and you go on a rotation and it's your only audition rotation, like you may just assume that everybody does things the same way and they don't. So it's important to know kind of what that means. But I think most of the pathology programs out there are great. You're probably going to have, wonderful choices ahead of you. So don't sweat it too much. Just make decisions based off of your values. If you want some more information, I believe matchpath.com is going to be publishing a glossary of terms that goes over some of these things that we talked about in this video. They're going to be publishing that sometime in the next week or two, I would imagine. So that's going to come out soon. Matchtopath.com has a ton of helpful resources. I highly recommend that you check them out. In fact, let's just go there right now. This is matchpath.com. If you come to their resources, blogs and resources, they have a lot of really helpful stuff in here. So a lot of really great stuff to read about. And this website is maintained by some pretty awesome people. So just a plug for them. And yeah, I hope you all have a great day. Good luck. Feel free to contact me if you have any questions.